When darkness whispers promises of power, and the guardian appears with wisdom, some choices echo through eternity. This is the true story of Amara Hassan, a 21-year-old Pakistani-American student who faced a decision that would either damn her soul or set her free. What started as everyday racism at Northern State University escalated into something far more sinister, something that offered her the power to destroy her enemies, but at a price that would cost her everything she believed in. The entity that approached her wasn't seeking to help, it wanted to corrupt. And when she nearly said yes, a mysterious figure appeared in the campus library, offering her something far more valuable than revenge: redemption. But here's what still haunts Amara to this day. When she tried to find that wise stranger who saved her from making the worst mistake of her life, she discovered something impossible. Something that proves guardian angels walk among us, even when we can't see them. Amara Hassan had dreamed of studying biochemistry since she was 12 years old. Growing up in Detroit as the daughter of Pakistani immigrants, she'd watched her father work double shifts at an automotive plant, while her mother cleaned offices at night, both sacrificing everything so their daughter could become the doctor they'd never had the opportunity to be. Northern State University in Ohio was supposed to be her gateway to medical school. With a partial scholarship and her parents' savings, she'd made it to her junior year with a 3.8 GPA. She was so close to her dream that she could taste it. But dreams have a way of turning into nightmares when hatred decides to show its face. It started small, the way these things always do. Comments about her hijab in the dining hall. Whispers about going back where she came from in the chemistry lab. Someone had even written "terrorist" on her dorm room door during her sophomore year. Though campus security claimed they couldn't find who did it, Amara had learned to keep her head down, focus on her studies, and ignore the ignorance. Her parents had taught her that education was the path to a better life, that knowledge would protect her from the small minds that judged her for her faith and her heritage. "Let your success be your revenge," her mother would say during their weekly phone calls. But by October of her junior year, the harassment had escalated beyond cruel words and vandalism. The worst of it came from a group of 3 students led by Brad Coulson, a pre-med student from a wealthy Connecticut family who seemed to take personal offense to Amara's academic success. Brad was the type who'd never had to work for anything in his life, whose father's donations to the university had probably secured his admission. He was failing organic chemistry while Amara topped every exam. Maybe if you spent less time playing dress-up in that head rag and more time actually studying American science instead of your backwards desert religion, you'd understand why you don't belong here. Brad had sneered at her after their last exam results were posted. His friends, Kevin Walsh and Danny Peterson, had laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Amara had wanted to respond to tell him that her backwards desert religion had contributed more to mathematics, medicine, and astronomy than his ignorant mind could comprehend. She wanted to explain that while his ancestors were still figuring out basic hygiene, Islamic scholars were performing cataract surgery and establishing universities. But she'd learned that engaging with people like Brad only made things worse. Instead, she'd gathered her books and walked away, feeling the familiar burn of humiliation in her cheeks. She'd gone back to her dorm room, performed wudu, and prayed, asking God for patience and strength. Her grandmother back in Lahore had always told her that God tested those he loved most, and that patience in the face of adversity was rewarded in this life and the next. The first sign that something had changed came 3 weeks later on a cold Thursday evening in late October. Amara was leaving the library after a 10-hour study session, her backpack heavy with textbooks and her mind exhausted from memorizing metabolic pathways. The campus was mostly empty, with most students either at parties or holed up in their rooms for the night. She was walking past the old oak tree near the science building when she heard Brad's voice behind her. "Hey, terrorist! Where you going so fast?" Amara's heart sank. She turned to see Brad, Kevin, and Danny approaching, clearly drunk from whatever party they'd stumbled out of. Brad was holding a bottle of beer, and there was a mean glint in his eyes that she'd never seen before. "I asked you a question," Brad said, stepping closer. "Don't be rude. We just want to talk." "I need to get back to my dorm," Amara said quietly, clutching her backpack straps. "Please leave me alone." "Leave you alone?" Kevin laughed. "We're being friendly. Right, guys? We want to know about your culture. Like, is it true that your dad sold you to some old man back in Pakistan for a camel or something?" Danny found this hilarious. "Nah, man. I heard they pay in goats." Amara felt her face flush with anger and embarrassment, but she tried to push past them. Brad stepped into her path, close enough that she could smell the alcohol on his breath. "We're not done talking," he said. "You know, I've been thinking about you, Amara. About how you're taking up a spot that should go to a real American. My girlfriend didn't get into this program because of diversity quotas, and here you are, pretending to be smart with your little headscarf and your fake piety." "I earned my place here," Amara said, finding her voice. "My grades speak for themselves." "Your grades?" Brad laughed. "Please. Everyone knows professors go easy on you people, so they don't get called racist. It's not real achievement when the game is rigged in your favor." That's when something shifted in the air around them. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees in an instant, and the streetlights began to flicker. Brad and his friends didn't seem to notice, but Amara felt a presence settling over the area like a heavy blanket. "You know what I think?" Brad continued, his voice becoming crueler. "I think we should see how smart you really are. Kevin, grab her bag. Let's see if she's actually doing the work or if she's just copying answers from real students." As Kevin reached for her backpack, something extraordinary happened. His hand stopped midair as if he'd hit an invisible barrier. His eyes widened in confusion as he tried again, but his arms simply wouldn't move forward. "What the hell?" Kevin muttered, looking at his hand like it had betrayed him. Brad tried to step closer to Amara, but suddenly stumbled backward as if pushed by unseen hands. He landed hard on the ground, his beer bottle shattering on the concrete. "Did you guys feel that?" Danny asked, his voice shaking. "It's like something pushed him." Amara felt it too, a presence surrounding her, protective and powerful. But unlike the warm, gentle feeling she associated with answered prayers, this presence felt cold and hungry. It whispered at the edges of her consciousness, speaking words she somehow understood without hearing them. "They hurt you," the voice said. "They mock your faith, your family, your worth. Would you like to hurt them back?" The three young men were backing away now, clearly spooked by whatever invisible force had intervened. But Brad's pride wouldn't let him retreat entirely. "This isn't over, terrorist," he called out as they hurried away. "You can't hide behind whatever witchcraft you're using forever." Alone under the flickering streetlight, Amara felt the presence grow stronger. The cold sensation wrapped around her like an embrace, and the whispered voice became clearer. "You don't have to be their victim anymore," it said. "I can give you power, real power. The kind that would make them pay for every insult, every humiliation, every moment they made you feel small." Amara looked around but saw no one. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You're stronger than you know," the presence continued. Your faith, your heritage, your pain, it all makes you special. I can help you channel that strength. I can help you make them suffer the way they've made you suffer. Who are you? Amara whispered into the darkness. I'm someone who understands injustice, the voice replied. Someone who knows that sometimes good people have to do dark things to protect themselves. Your God tells you to turn the other cheek. But what has that gotten you? More pain, more humiliation. I offer you something better, the power to end this once and for all. As the words washed over her, Amara felt something dark and seductive in the offer. Images flashed through her mind. Brad writhing in agony, Kevin and Danny begging for mercy, the entire university finally seeing her as someone not to be crossed. She thought of all the nights she'd cried herself to sleep after particularly brutal encounters with racism. All the times she'd called her parents, trying not to let them hear her tears as she assured them everything was fine at school. Think about it, the voice said, beginning to fade. I'll come to you again tomorrow night. Meet me in the basement of the library at midnight if you want to accept my gift. But remember, they will never stop hurting you unless you make them stop. The presence vanished, leaving Amara alone under the now steady streetlight. The temperature returned to normal, and the only evidence of what had happened was Brad's broken beer bottle glittering on the concrete. She walked back to her dorm in a daze, her mind reeling from the encounter. Part of her wanted to dismiss it as stress-induced hallucination, but she couldn't explain what had happened to Brad and his friends. Something had protected her, and now that same something was offering her the power to fight back. The next day passed in a blur of classes and conflicted thoughts. Amara tried to focus on her biochemistry lecture, but her mind kept returning to the voice and its offer. During lunch, she overheard Kevin telling a group of students about their weird experience with her the night before, painting her as some kind of witch who had used supernatural powers to attack them. I'm telling you, man, it was freaky, Kevin was saying to a table full of listeners. She just looked at us, and suddenly Brad got knocked down by invisible hands or something. These people probably practice all kinds of dark magic in those mosques. The story was already being distorted, making her sound dangerous and mystical rather than victimized. Amara realized that no matter what had actually happened, she would be blamed for it. The narrative would always paint her as the threat, never the victim. That evening, as she tried to study in her dorm room, her phone buzzed with notifications. Someone had posted Kevin's story on social media, and it was gaining traction among certain groups on campus. The comments were a mixture of mockery and genuine fear, with several people calling for her to be investigated or expelled. See that terrorist girl is probably making bombs in her room, read one comment. We need to get these people out of our schools before they hurt someone, read another. She's dangerous. I always knew there was something off about her. Amara set her phone aside, feeling the familiar sting of tears. She performed her evening prayers, but found it difficult to concentrate on the words. The peaceful surrender that usually came with prayer felt distant and forced. At 11:30 p.m., she found herself walking across campus toward the library. She told herself she was just going for a walk to clear her head, but her feet carried her directly to the building where the voice had promised to meet her. The library basement was dimly lit, with only emergency lighting casting long shadows between the stacks of old books and archive materials. Amara had been down here a few times for research, but never this late at night. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant hum of heating systems. At exactly midnight, the temperature plummeted again, and the presence returned. You came, the voice said, sounding pleased. I knew you were intelligent. You understand that sometimes extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary measures. I don't even know what you are, Amara said aloud, her voice echoing strangely in the basement. I'm a solution to your problem, came the reply. I'm the answer to every prayer you've ever offered for justice, for protection, for the strength to stand up to those who hurt you. A figure began to materialize in the shadows between the book stacks, tall and imposing, wearing what looked like an expensive suit. Its face was handsome, but cold, with dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient knowledge and terrible hunger. You're not an angel, Amara breathed, instinctively taking a step back. Angels are weak, the figure said, its voice now clearly masculine and hypnotically smooth. They offer comfort and hope, but no real power. I offer you the ability to rewrite your story, to become the author of their suffering instead of the victim of their hatred. The figure extended one perfectly manicured hand, and Amara could see strange symbols carved into its palm, symbols that seemed to writhe and shift when she looked directly at them. Take my hand, he said, and I will give you abilities beyond your imagination. You could make Brad Coulson experience every moment of fear and helplessness he's ever inflicted on you. You could show Kevin Walsh what it feels like to have his body betray him, the way his words have betrayed common decency. Danny Peterson could learn what true terror means. What would I have to do? Amara found herself asking, horrified that she was even considering it. Nothing you shouldn't want to do anyway, the figure replied. Simply accept my gift and use it to balance the scales of justice. They hurt you because they see you as powerless. Make them understand how wrong they are. The offer was seductive in its simplicity. After years of enduring racism and harassment, after countless nights of tears and prayers that seemed to go unanswered, here was someone offering her the power to end it all. She could make them pay. She could make them afraid. She could finally be the one in control. Amara reached out toward the figure's outstretched hand, her fingers inches away from his palm. There has to be another way. The new voice was gentle, but firm, coming from the stairway behind her. Amara spun around to see an elderly man descending into the basement, his footsteps silent despite his apparent age. He was wearing a maintenance uniform and a baseball cap, pulled low over his face, but there was something about his presence that immediately made her feel safer. The dark figure hissed in annoyance. You're interrupting something that doesn't concern you, old man. On the contrary, the maintenance worker said calmly, continuing his approach. It concerns me very much when someone tries to destroy one of God's children through manipulation and false promises. He looked directly at Amara, and she could see kindness and wisdom in his eyes, though his face remained mostly shadowed by the cap. Amara Hassan, daughter of Rashid and Fatima, granddaughter of Nazreen, who prays for you every day in Lahore. You don't need his power to find justice. Amara gasped. How do you know my grandmother's name? I know many things, he said gently. I know that you've been reading Surah Al-Baqarah every morning since you were 7 years old. I know that you've memorized 17 chapters of the Quran, and that your favorite verse is Ayatul Kursi, because your grandmother taught it to you as protection against evil. I know that you've never missed a prayer, even during your most difficult days here. The dark figure stepped forward aggressively. Don't listen to him, Amara. He's trying to keep you weak, to keep you a victim. I offer you strength. He offers you corruption, the maintenance worker said firmly. Temporary power in exchange for your eternal soul. The same bargain he's offered to countless others who found themselves in desperate situations. Tell me, child, if you accept his gift and use it to hurt those young men, what happens to the person you've worked so hard to become? Amara felt tears starting to fall. But they'll never stop. They'll keep hurting me, and people like me. The system doesn't protect us. Prayer doesn't seem to help. What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to remember who you are, he said gently. You're not defined by their hatred. You're not limited by their ignorance. You have something far more powerful than what he's offering. You have faith, intelligence, and a support system that stretches across oceans. The maintenance worker moved closer, and Amara noticed that his presence seemed to push back the darkness that had been gathering around the demonic figure. You want justice, he continued. Real justice comes through proper channels. Document everything. Report them to the administration. Contact the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. Reach out to civil rights organizations. Use the very system they think protects them to hold them accountable for their actions. He's telling you to trust in institutions that have failed you, the dark figure interjected. How many times have you reported harassment and been told to just ignore it or give them the benefit of the doubt? How has that worked for you? Some battles take time, the maintenance worker acknowledged. Some victories require patience and persistence. But the methods you use to achieve justice matter as much as the justice itself. If you defeat hatred with hatred, what have you really won? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, weathered copy of the Quran. Your grandmother gave you the tools to fight this battle years ago. Do you remember what Ayatul Kursi says about God's protection? Amara nodded, reciting from memory. God, there is no deity except him, the ever-living, the sustainer of existence. Neither drowsiness overtakes him, nor sleep. To him belongs whatever is in the heavens, and whatever is on the earth. And what does that mean for someone who truly believes? The maintenance worker prompted. That God's protection is absolute, Amara said, feeling strength returning to her voice. That those who trust in him are never truly powerless. The dark figure was beginning to fade, his handsome features twisting into something ugly and desperate. You're making a mistake, Amara. You'll regret this weakness when they hurt you again. It's not weakness to choose the right path, Amara said firmly, turning away from the fading figure. It's strength. She looked back at the maintenance worker, who was smiling with quiet pride. What should I do now? Now you do what your faith has always taught you to do, he said. You trust in God's plan. You work through proper channels for justice. And you never let anyone convince you that their darkness is stronger than his light. 3 weeks later, Amara sat in the office of Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the university's new Title IX coordinator, reviewing the comprehensive complaint she had filed against Brad Coulson, Kevin Walsh, and Danny Peterson. She had documented every incident, gathered witness statements, and compiled a detailed record of harassment that painted a clear picture of systematic discrimination. The investigation that followed was thorough and swift. Security footage from various campus locations corroborated much of Amara's account, and several other students came forward with their own experiences of harassment from the same 3 individuals. Brad Coulson was expelled from the university and barred from applying to any medical schools due to violations of professional conduct standards. Kevin Walsh and Danny Peterson faced suspension and mandatory diversity training, along with academic probation that would appear on their permanent records. More importantly, Amara's complaint had prompted a campus-wide review of harassment policies, leading to the implementation of new protections for students from minority backgrounds and the establishment of a rapid response team for investigating discrimination complaints. As she walked across campus after her final meeting with Dr. Warren, Amara felt a peace she hadn't experienced in months. The maintenance worker had been right. Real justice took time and proper channels, but it was infinitely more satisfying than the temporary satisfaction revenge would have provided. She decided to visit the library basement one more time, hoping to thank the kind stranger who had saved her from making a terrible mistake. She had tried to find him several times over the past few weeks, asking other maintenance staff about the elderly man with the baseball cap, but no one seemed to know who she was describing. As she reached the basement level, she remembered something that made her heart skip a beat. The library had security cameras throughout the building, including the basement level. If she could access the footage from that night, she might be able to identify her mysterious helper and properly thank him. The security office was located on the ground floor, and the head of campus security, Officer Martinez, was someone Amara had worked with during her harassment complaint. He was happy to help when she explained she was trying to identify someone who had assisted her during a difficult time. "Let's see," Officer Martinez said, pulling up the camera feed from the basement level for the night in question. "What time would this have been?" "Around midnight," Amara said, watching the screen as he scrolled through the footage. There she was on the grainy black and white feed, entering the basement area at 11:58 p.m. The camera showed her standing alone between the book stacks, and Amara could see herself clearly gesturing and speaking as if in conversation with someone. But she was completely alone. The footage showed her reaching out her hand toward empty air, then suddenly jerking it back as if someone had warned her. She could see herself turning and responding to someone behind her, nodding and speaking animatedly, but there was no one else in the frame. For 23 minutes, the security camera recorded Amara Hassan having an intense conversation with absolutely no one. "Are you feeling all right, Miss Hassan?" Officer Martinez asked, concerned. "The footage shows you were alone down there. Were you perhaps on a phone call?" Amara stared at the screen, watching herself receive guidance and protection from someone who, according to recorded evidence, had never been there at all. "No," she whispered, understanding flooding through her. "No phone call. Just a guardian angel." As she walked back to her dorm that night, Amara smiled up at the stars and whispered a prayer of gratitude. Sometimes protection comes in forms we can see and touch. Sometimes it comes from lawyers and administrators and proper channels. And sometimes it comes from messengers we can't prove existed, but who appear exactly when we need them most, reminding us that we are never truly alone and that the right path, though difficult, always leads to the light.